Okay. I'll tell you a story I've never told anyone before. Yeah, I was in the middle of On Our Backs, and we had just done this issue, and we were kind of, snotty and sarcastic sometimes, and we had drawn, and we did this story that was called My Date with Holly Near. Now, this is really mean, because as a young woman, I can sit here and sing to you every Holly Near song there is. I know them all. I brought her to my high school. I loved her. But as time went on, she became kind of like the pure Joan Baez figure of the lesbian feminist movement. And we had this story that was really snotty about how my date with Holly Near, we had warm milk and we wore earth tones, and it was just making fun of being like woo-woo, right? That was the satire. And I get a call from a guy who said he was the editor at Penthouse Forum magazine, which was that little chapbook that Penthouse used to publish that was not really picture-oriented. It was all the letters and stories and kind of Masters and Johnson style sex ed. It had the veneer of like, we're serious about sex education, but then it had these really hot and heavy letters. And I remember reading those as a kid and finding them incredibly arousing. So here's this guy, he's calling, and he said he had read My Date with Holly Near, and he thought it was really a gas, and he wanted to know if I'd like to write an erotic movie review column. Wow, thank you, Holly Near. How could it have happened otherwise? And I didn't want to tell him that I barely knew anything about sex movies, and at that time it was just as Betamax recorders were getting popular. I didn't know a soul with a VCR. If you wanted to see a porn movie, you went to a big theater downtown in a big city. But this was a paid gig. I mean, this was a regular gig. What he paid me in the late 80s, people, I don't even want to tell you, you'll all start crying. I mean, this was when people got paid well to write. But I was like, that's it, quit my day job, let's go shoe shopping. I was like ecstatic. Yes, I'll do it. It was kind of like you. Like I didn't know where Vegas was, but I was going there. And I'm like you, really studious and serious, and I was trying to see, well, who does porn reviews? And at the time, there was only kind of basically company PR copy. Like you could read Hustler and it would say, Double D Debbie delivers the goods, like it didn't say anything, but they did have this thing called a Peter meter, which I thought was rather clever, fully erect and it was always, it's the advertisers who paid for these reviews, so it was always either fully erect or just slightly, maybe 10 o'clock was like the worst it got. And the one that I looked at, there was a movie that got a complete limp dick, and the reviewer, for the first time, used his own voice to say how upset and how much he hated this movie. It was called Smoker, and I said, that's the one we're gonna go see. And I went to the Pussycat Theater, and I remember being a little nervous that somebody might try to molest me, or I was going to have a problem, but in fact the men just cleared away from me like I was a Pinkerton detective. And I was worried that I was going to sit in a seat of cum, and then I became fairly kind of aware that no one cares what the movie is, they're all there fucking each other. It was like Crash Course. But the movie came on, which I'm so glad I got to see in 35 millimeters. So beautiful, and it was still, probably because it was such a big impression on me. It was such a great movie. That was my first review, and I worked there as a contributing editor for many years, and I had this mission. I wanted to be the Pauline Kael of porn. I wanted to be like Roger Ebert. I wanted to talk about these like they were movies, like this is part of film history, and why not talk about it? At Good Vibes at the time, you have to remember, when Joni started Good Vibes, she was so sensitive about focusing on clitoral stimulation, external clitoral stimulation. We didn't even have anything you could use to put inside yourself. I had to beg her. I said, look, I know that the straight women need to get over the penis-vagina intercourse problem, but the lesbians are already over it and they want to fuck. So can we please have, like a few, like these purple dildos. I think it'll be great. So, and then I was like, we should have some, because there are these interesting movies. You'd be surprised. It's much more diverse than Hollywood. There's all kinds of interesting people, and it's almost like being involved in a satellite of Hollywood. All these film school and Signal Corps people and industrial film, all these students that are doing interesting things. And there's some great actors. There's Jamie Gillis is Shakespearean. I mean, you've got to see these people. She said, I agree with you, but the covers are so disgusting and sexist and icky. Is there a way we can have a video library, but no one can see the box cover? That's like the opposite of marketing. And we're like, I was like, you know, I agree the box covers are obnoxious. Yes, we'll burn all the box covers. We'll just keep them in, and then we'll write our own descriptions, and people have to read what we have to say, well, what I have to say about them. And I was, in some ways, I did hit a good mark. I did find things that were widely popular, and I wasn't completely narrow about my own tastes. But in some cases, I was attracted to dark movies and weird themes and existential auteurs, and that wasn't always, you know, the hottest seller, but I thought I did it anyway.